Hello, it's me. This is Major. Hold on. There he is. Oh, sweet boy. Hey, you, my love. There he is. Always looking to me to provide him running. We run together. If I even talk about a WALK, he'll get crazy. So I wanted to make a video, basically what psychosis recovery can look like. So basically, I developed psychosis some years back, and I experienced hearing things that were not there, seeing things that were not there, smelling things that were not there, feeling things that were not there, tasting things that were not there. That was terrible, and I lost my mind. Okay, and what I discovered was that I needed routine and regimen. And so I started a yoga practice. I started communicating with people, making a deliberate attempt at communicating with people. I started running. I started eating vegan food. And I started reading, actually. Working, volunteering, going outside into nature. Simple, humble, practical living, mundane routine every single day, picking up the pieces of my life. And it was extremely hard when I was in the midst of psychosis. And what I've found is that through medication as well, I was able to get to a point where my symptoms were almost entirely diminished, at least a lot of the delusional aspects of it. And then a lot of the symptoms were just and are now sort of reserved for the nighttime. With some, this is 3 years on now, so it's been 3 years since my psychosis, 2 or 3 years. I sometimes hear voices during the day, but I experience it as suggestions or summations of what I'm experiencing, or it feels like a spirit that's just giving me like a bit of advice, and it's fairly infrequent throughout the day. But at nighttime is when I see things. I just close my eyes. And I feel like this is a practice that people try to develop, but it's something that just sort of has become something that I experience is when you close your eyes and you can like see things. I don't think everyone does this. I think for a lot of people it's just blackness. And for a lot of my life, based on what I was doing and etc., closing my eyes was just a sort of a fuzzy experience of blackness. After psychosis, I developed like astral projection, my lucid dream. I also became sober from drugs and alcohol. So astral projecting, lucid dreaming, seeing visions when I close my eyes, hearing voices, seeing things that aren't there, seeing spirits, seeing things in my periphery, hearing knocking on the walls, hearing voices coming out of like the pipes and stuff, and just like a whirlwind of psychic phenomenon. but it's all becoming more controlled and condensed down into a really good form nowadays. Um, and I think that really what it took was a body practice, a dietary practice, a medication regimen, some therapy, relocating myself to a place where I would be looked after and not expected to get a job right away, which was my parents' house at the time. Getting up early in the morning and just believing that there would be some kind of way through this. So I think that it's hard to believe sometimes in the middle of psychosis, you're in the midst of it, that there's any there will be any way through this, or there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I remember just feeling very. I mean, you can become suicidal if it's really second to second torture, like on some level, just onslaught of like your senses and just everything is warped. It can feel disorientating, and it's like, what's the point of living if my life is just this chaotic soup? But I really do think foundationally, if you're really in the middle of some chaos in that sense, that getting on a medication would be the first, antipsychotic would be the first and foremost thing that you ought to do. And then also seeking therapy. And a therapist, I always was of the belief that a therapist should be more than just a therapist and should be a little bit of a psychic. A psychic can kind of crack you, and a psychic can kind of be like a nearly dead person. Like a psychic people are kind of half dead in a certain way. They're like functioning schizophrenics. And for everything that they see, they can actually lose a lot of hope and faith in humanity. Whereas a person who can just look at you like a piece of meat, and they can go and they go back to what they've learned in university, and the research that they've done, and they cross-reference that with what they're hearing from you, and they have this kind of algorithm that they're going on in their head, and they're shaking their head, and they have like good communication skills and a charisma about them and something. They're kind of into themselves too, you know, a little bit, and they can just be a kind of a talking head that you can sort of talk to, and that sort of share ideas with, and they're kind of half listening, half thinking about the next thing that they might say, and a lot of therapists operate kind of like this, and even that is probably better than dealing with a psychic, because a person who's secretly hoping for the world to explode, or you know what I mean, the psychics are a little difficult to navigate, or someone they've worked themselves out so much that they're kind of almost like they're a lot of psychics are, I don't know how to explain it, it's they're not as in the earth, they're not as like, the roots are not like in the earth, and they're like their tribalism, the feeling of Kohati Tanga, which is a Maori term for they're not like, you know, in the drum circle, you know, they're kind of like sort of in a tent in the background somewhere with their bones, just throwing them on the ground, and they're kind of like, their eyes are going in their up top of their head. You know, psychics are not exactly the right people to work with, I think, for a for the jaded quality of what that entails. But so yeah, so getting just like maybe some of even a motivational approach, who believes in EDMR, or who believes in cognitive behavioral therapy, or what's that other one, DBM. There's a lot of different approaches. Someone who will recommend you a book, and recommend you a workbook. You know what I mean? Sometimes that can be a little more helpful, especially if you're coming from any kind of conventional upbringing in terms of your parents and in terms of your schooling. You know what I mean? As spiritual or otherwise as you might think you are, sometimes you can just you can just like be filling out some kind of rediscovering the self workbook, and that can be your kind of like somehow unlocks what unlocks something for you that you think that you need Reiki, or you think you need all these special therapies. um so yeah, I just found basically a Christian housewife, Republican woman who I'd been working with in my late teens, and I reconnected with her, and I told her that I'd been sort of in communication with God, because quite literally I was seeing angels and talking to God and having trials before God in my kind of psychosis. I didn't go exactly into detail about that, but I told her that I was a believer, when at the time, 18, I was an atheist. She was very happy for that, and was providing me with like Bible references and Jesus related workbooks and things, and that was all that was great. Useful. Everything's useful. Everything's fated to be anyway, in some kind of sense. Um, so I had the therapy for a while. I took the antipsychotics, and I started working, and I started not taking drugs and alcohol, and communicating with my parents and trying to mend that relationship between my mother and father. And then I got back into communication with my partner, ended up going back to New Zealand, which is where I went crazy, and then I returned after I was not as crazy. The things that I maintained was a regimen of yoga, running, diet, medication, work. And it's slow, it's step by step, day by day. And you find that life, you can tolerate life again. Life is worth living, that you can have hopes and dreams, that you can engage in life in the way that maybe you thought what life was like when you were a child. Like, life can be something hopeful and something with goals and aspirations, and with things that you can work towards. I'm still a little bit traumatized by all the stuff that I experience and that I continue to experience. Medication has been this ongoing, off and on kind of journey where I go off it for several months, but then something happens and I have to get back on it. The most recent thing was some sort of demon attack in the astral, which I can't remember. A demon, a couple months back. I was off the medication, but then a demon. I don't have a very educated understanding of the hierarchy of entities that I experience. So things for me are either angels, demons, God, spirits, or ghosts. I don't really have, that's as far, it's as knowledgeable as I am of the beings that I experience, but this seemed to be a demon, and sat on my chest, zapped me, hung me with a noose, slit my wrists, cut my throat. I don't remember what it did, but it scared me so much that the next day I went back on medication, and have since been on a very low dose of a antipsychotic since then, in order to just kind of put myself to sleep. I still experience musical hallucinations quite often, which is when it's usually a spirit says, here you go. And then I hear like a violin playing, and some kind of singer. Sometimes the singer is me. Sometimes the singer is male. Sometimes it's female. Sometimes it's in a different language. And a whole sort of band. And I can like orchestrate with my mind. I don't know how to explain how this happens, but it's like some kind of neurofeedback method in which I conduct entire like orchestras or musical compositions. That's really fun. That's kind of a fun side effect. Lucid dreaming is a fun side effect. The astral projection is a fun side effect, but I find that sometimes the astral projection is birthed out of a fear state instead of actually just astral projecting using a technique. It's more like I'm so clouded with phenomena that I just black out and then I go into an astral projection. But things lately have been very positive. I was at a point where I was using music every night to get myself to sleep, and I no longer use the music. I'm able to hear the voices and the spirits, and I'm not as afraid, and I'm not as much pushing them back. So I'm more tolerant of this stuff, and a lot of my fear and stuff, which would only lead to like more kind of psychic attacks and things like that, that's diminished, and I can almost like laugh a lot of times at the stuff that I hear, like, or experience. And it is reserved kind of for the nighttime for the most part, so it's a very tolerable. And I work a full-time job. I'm a full-time student. I go to the gym. I do yoga. I run. I give my dogs walks. I eat raw vegan food. And that's basically my life. And so, yeah. And I developed psychosis during the COVID outbreak. So 2020, early 2020. And it's now 2023, and I can say that I have a boyfriend. I have 2 dogs that I look after and who get everything that they deserve and everything they need. I have school. I'm making all A's. I'm doing well at work. I get out every day, get some sunshine, get some moonlight, get a little bit of everything. And I live a little bit more of a stoic existence than my 20s, which was a lot more chaotic. Just, yeah, tormenting a lot of the time. It was just punctuated by massive highs and really low lows. Just, that was my 20s. And so I live a kind of more stable, stoic existence now. And I do find myself still looking for like the zest or the oomph. And so, and I have this sort of period between semesters at school. So I'm gonna, actually, my coworker's wife teaches piano and has offered to give me some piano lessons at a reduced cost. So I'm gonna like learn piano because I love the piano. I always used to play the piano, but I never knew how to play the piano. But I loved playing it. So I'm gonna actually try to formally learn how to play the piano. I've bought a piano. I am always thinking about playing the piano, so I'm gonna try to learn the piano. And I've made a couple friends at work, and me and my boyfriend's relationship is pretty strong, and I feel lucky. I feel like a very lucky person because I thought I was gonna die or I thought I was gonna end up homeless. So if you're feeling like you might die or you might end up homeless, just, I would say, persevere, get a routine in place, find a safe place where you can be for a few months, get on some medication, avoid the psych ward, don't fraternize with psychics, get a good therapist who's a motivational style or CBD, not CBD, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT style. And there's definitely hope. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. And thank you. Goodbye.